Hi everybody, Jim Ostrowski here with the Liberty Driving Podcast. On my way down to Nashville, Tennessee Firearms Association convention is tomorrow, and I'm very interested in checking this organization out. They seem to be pretty hardcore. The national gun groups, I don't know. In general, I'm not going to call out names, but they tend to be a little more conservative in their approach. The state gun groups seem to be a little bit more hardcore. I think that kind of makes sense, because as you get higher up in the food chain, you tend to get a little bit more political. So this is coming off the best brief I've ever written on the Second Amendment for the New Hampshire Firearms Association. That's going to be argued in the highest court in Massachusetts on Monday. I was actually thinking of going, but I decided to go to Tennessee instead. I'm going to be watching the live stream. I'll have some commentary about it. I posted my brief. The brief is an exemplar of what a true Second Amendment legal brief should look like, as opposed to some of the other briefs that I read. And all the big Second Amendment groups are represented, and they have big fat budgets to hire who are undoubtedly very good lawyers. It's just that I totally disagree with their approach. In fact, in my brief, I criticized the approach of the other Second Amendment people in court, because hey, I don't give a shit. You know, I don't know anybody to anything except my parents, who are in heaven. So I'm completely independent. I guess that's the opposite side of the coin of not being wealthy. I've never been bought off by anybody. And by the way, all these podcasters getting money from Russia, where's my money? I think we should get the hell out of the Ukraine war. Where's my money? Yeah, that's just my opinion. So I guess what I want to talk about is not at great length, because I'm driving, but the school shooting in Georgia the other day. And we've been through this before, and it's always the same story. In fact, we've been through this so many times, and what I mean through it, what I mean to say is the exploitation by progressives whose policies have failed everywhere, and everywhere they've been tried since 1913. Like, literally every single progressive program properly defined as the use of aggressive force to attempt to improve society, which obviously makes no sense. And in Progressivism, a primer, I broke it down further, and I said, well, you know, there's only 6 things that the government does: taxation, regulation, etc. There's 6 of them, and all of them involve the use of aggressive government violence. And by their very nature, they generate more problems than they solve. They don't solve any problems, but they generate more problems than they solve. So all progressive programs fail, and therefore, see, if you haven't read my book, Progressivism, you don't know how to do this. And the Republican Party, you saw J.D. Vance respond to the school shooting. Now, apparently AP distorted his remarks, but still, the Republicans don't know how to respond to the left on gun control. The Republican Party doesn't know how to respond to the left on gun control. Second Amendment lawyers don't even know how to respond to the left on gun control. That's why I wrote 2 books. The second one is the one that I'm promoting at the moment, but you should really read both of them. They're both on Amazon. Exposing the 2 big lies of the gun control movement. So, government schools, where these shootings almost always take place, these are government institutions. I don't know if people are aware, I assume you are, that the kids are forced to be there. If you don't show up, and I checked this every state has a truancy law. I wrote a book about this, so I know. It's called Free the Children. Nobody read it. Half of my books sell and the other half don't. But ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee you, they're all worth reading. It's like that book could have caused a revolution. In fact, let me talk about that book. Because the point of that book was, again, the Democratic Party, an acquaintance of mine, Sam Francis, said the Democratic Party is the evil party and the Republican Party is the stupid party, and I think that's basically true. So the book Free the Children, which nobody read, basically said, why does the Republican Party always talk about school choice, and in their federal program, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education? Sometimes they say that, sometimes they don't. They never fucking mean it, because they're a bunch of cowards, gutless wonders. They never abolish anything. They haven't repealed a single progressive program since 1913. So I noticed over the years that about 23 states are completely controlled by the Republican Party. Education, whether you know it or not, is almost entirely a state and local issue. Now, there's some federal funding, but the federal government has limited direct power over state schools. So what I said was, if you people believe in school choice, if you people are against socialism and big government, why don't you just get rid of the GD government schools in your states that you control? Well, no, the federal government could not stop you. Now, the only legal hassle there is that most of the state constitutions have some sort of a right to education, which is bullshit, because education is a service, not a right. And it's a service that the government's particularly bad at supplying, as I said in my book, Government Schools. And again, let me give a little commercial to the podcast. In contradistinction to almost every other podcast, I'd say 99.9% of all podcasts, when I'm talking about a subject, I've probably already written a book about it. So I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. I actually know this shit cold. So the point of Free the Children was, why don't you just get rid, in the 23 states, get rid of these government schools? They never had any reason to exist in the first place. They violated every core principle of the American Revolution. And I think the only founder who was really in favor of these things was Benjamin Rush. Jefferson, not really. I'm not going to slice and dice that right now. But if you think that Jefferson would have favored the present government school system, you're wrong about that. And even if he did, he was wrong. The first generation of libertarian, he was really the second generation. The first and second generation usually have some contradictions. They haven't worked out the theory entirely. And then the later generations, people like H.L. Mencken, Knox, the three women, Rand Patterson, and Rose Wilder Lane, and then the later people like Rothbard and so on, and then the people that Rothbard taught, like me. We're hardcore. We get rid of all the contradictions. So whether Jefferson said something or not about public education, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. He would not have supported the present system. I guarantee you that. So guess what? I got, no support on the book. I went down south. I contacted, this group that's allegedly in favor of liberty. And when it comes to education, I don't want to really get into any fights with groups. I need all the support I can get. But I got completely ignored. And you know what? If Georgia had gotten rid of their damn school system, there wouldn't have been a shooting the other day in Georgia. So these are government schools. It's a completely government-driven operation. The kids are there under threat of jailing their fucking parents, and the government's in charge of law enforcement. And the government is specifically in charge of security. So, what does the left say? Government's got to get bigger after a shooting. What? No. Government's got to get smaller. That's the difference between a progressive and a libertarian. The progressive tries to figure out how government can fix some problem that government created in the first place. And the libertarian thinks, well, what prior government policies caused this problem to happen in the first place? A completely different approach. We're right and they're wrong. We're right and they're wrong. So I could talk for hours about this shooting, but in order to understand the reaction, you have to understand what progressivism is. Progressivism is a form of therapy. Progressivism is a form of therapy, emotional therapy. If you don't understand that, and you try to have a rational argument with the progressive, well, follow my Twitter account. I argue with these people all the time. I use facts and logic. Every once in a while, I throw in a kind of a snide remark. They're absolutely vicious against me, and I tolerate it for the purpose of that, for the expectation that there's people reading this thing who will see through what's happening, and I'm spreading the libertarian message there. I take the abuse at a certain point. I bow out, but progressivism is a form of therapy which posits aggressive government violence, government gun violence, by the way, government gun violence. This is a tremendous irony. Kamala Harris used to put people in jail for truancy violations. In other words, Kamala Harris used government guns to get your kids to go to force your kids to go to government school, and then they get shot. And who does she blame? Jim Ostrowski and you, and basically all citizens, private gun owners. What the hell did I have to do with anything for? Don't come back at me. I have a term for it also. It's called liberty reduction as a form of grieving. Somebody dies because of an idiotic government policy, and instead of going to church and lighting a candle, I went to a funeral just 2 days ago, actually. So I'm not joking at all. That's what Catholics do. No, they use liberty reduction, government gun violence against innocent people, as a form of fucking grieving. Do you see what's going on here, folks? Do you see what happens when you go on the offense? The Republicans play defense. J.D. Vance, I got to listen to his comments, but it sounded like he was playing defense because he doesn't understand he's a smart guy. Hasn't read my book, obviously. If he had, he'd know how to respond. But so when government fails, they are congenitally incapable of blaming the government. A progressive is not self-critical. Progressivism, as I said in one of my articles, in fact, I think it might have been an article about mass shootings, which is on the web and probably on LouRockwell.com. You can still find it. Progressivism is a self-imposed mental disability. Progressivism is a self-imposed mental disability wherein the progressive basically hypnotizes himself or herself into never grasping that a government policy has failed, because that would interrupt the therapeutic function. It's like, oh my God, you mean the government can't solve this problem? I'm so nervous. I'm so unhappy. I can't sleep. And so instead of seeing what's in front of their face, they have to find, and this is textbook stuff. I mean, you could literally take notes and put this on your refrigerator. They have to find a non-governmental scapegoat. That's what the progressive must do to keep the emotional therapeutic function of progressivism going in their self-deluded mind. So, government school, government's in charge of the police, government's in charge of security. The kid went to government school, was probably bullied, most of them are. Many of the shooters take psychotropic drugs. The state controls psychiatry, regulates psychiatry, licenses these quacks. And by the way, what do I know about psychiatry? Well, the leading critic of psychiatry in the history, I'm going to nominate this my best podcast ever. Must be the fact that I've had like 6 cups of coffee. The leading critic of psychiatry in the history of the effing human race was my campaign chairman for governor in 1994 in New York, Thomas Zass. So I know a little bit about this stuff. So it's a complete government enterprise from start to finish. Government has a complete monopoly over what's happening in that school. They are completely at fault. And in fact, their claim of protecting us so we don't have to have guns is completely refuted by the fact that they didn't protect this school. Even though I don't know the details, probably a gun-free zone, whatever, the teachers probably can't, I don't know all those details. But I guarantee you that even in Georgia, there isn't a solid right to bear arms as I would understand it. And so that's another aspect of it too. So that's the way you have to analyze these things. But there's a whole different level, and let me switch to the explaining to dim-witted Republicans and dim-witted Second Amendment alleged experts how to answer this, how to answer these questions that come up after mass shootings. It's always the same thing. They need to read my article about the robotic progressive response to mass shootings. It's all sort of in there, and I guess I'm summarizing that. But there's a whole different aspect. Nobody has laid the groundwork until my 2 books and a few other books that are very obscure, and I cite one of those books in my book. It's a great book. I can't remember the title, but it's cited in my book. 2 or 3 books that really didn't get much attention. Nobody's laid the groundwork for the public to understand what the hell the Second Amendment is all about. It doesn't even have much to do with crime. We've been manipulated by the left, which hates guns. Progressives hate guns. By the way, if you want to know why progressives hate guns, read Progressivism, a primer. It's all in there. Because the progressive, again, believes that government force, aggressive government force, not law and order, not keeping the peace, but aggressive government force is the solution to all human problems. Well, government force implies that it's centralized. You can't have really decentralized government force. And the founders wanted the Second Amendment, and juries, by the way, both of which are being pissed on today by legal experts, judges, the population, the mainstream media. But the right to bear arms is a form of decentralization of power. And by the way, it's probably the greatest specific political accomplishment in human history. The greatest political accomplishment in human history is liberty. But on a specific level, the liberty to bear arms is like the greatest thing that ever happened to the human fucking race. And Republicans are on the defensive. Why are you on the defensive? There's a vast amount of evidence that if you understand that the Second Amendment is not about street crime, it's about deterring government tyranny and protecting the sovereignty of the people in a small R republic to kick the fuckers out when they get out of control. It works. It works brilliantly. It's the only thing that has ever worked. What other political idea other than liberty in the general sense, has ever worked to improve the condition of the human race. Nothing. I'm going to nominate. This is my best podcast ever. It's the coffee. It's worked magnificently. So why are we apologizing about it? Why haven't we been the voice crying in the wilderness, explaining to people what the hell it's all about, so that when there's a shooting in Georgia, people don't say, "Oh, guess we gotta grab all the guns." What do you mean grab the guns? You can't grab the guns, because then, like gun control world, the whole world minus the U.S. I've got flyers with me for the Tennessee group, by the way. My map of the world. Gun control world is in red. It's the entire world minus the U.S., which is in green. That's Second Amendment nation. Gun control world is a fucking mess. There's 40 or 50 ongoing wars or conflicts. There's ongoing genocides. There's ongoing mass rape of women as a tactic of war and genocide in gun control world. And that's what we would have if we didn't have the right to bear arms. And we wouldn't have the leading country in the history of the human race in terms of its economy. Number one in economy, 150. All these factoids are, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So this is why I'm going down to Tennessee to go to the state convention and try to spread this message. Hopefully they're receptive. I don't know those people. I assume I'll hit it off with all those people because we're on the same page. So that's basically all I have to say. I think I've kind of covered it already. And the new book is Exposing the Two Big Lies of the Gun Control Movement. It's on Amazon. It's a mind-blowing tour. It's about to say something I shouldn't say. It's a mind-blowing because it's self-congratulatory. Sorry. I don't have a PR firm like all these people on TV, you know. So that book is on Amazon. The first book, The Second Amendment Works, which really paints the complete picture. It's just that there was a little spot in the canvas that needed to be filled in, a very important spot. The second book does that and proves conclusively that the gun control movement is nothing but a pack of lies, and proves conclusively that the Second Amendment works. So we shouldn't apologize for shit after a mass shooting at a government institution which shouldn't exist in the first place. So have a great weekend, everybody. I'm